to Corporate Cafecito, a podcast based on professional development, career growth, and respecting our cultural identity. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Corporate Cafecito. Today I have Marina Hood. And Marina and I met because I was moderating a panel for Northwestern's Kellogg's Executive Women's Network. So beautiful women who have gone and gotten their MBAs at one of the most accredited schools. And Marina is one of those women. And we just hit it off and started talking. And one of the things that probably grabbed me about Marina was her warmth. And, we typically talk about how we need to help each other and how we need to praise each other. She's like, I'm a coach and I'm Latina. And I'm like, well, hello, get on my podcast, because I believe that we should be sharing the stage and lifting people up. And Marina, your warmth just touched me. So why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you for that. And I feel the same about you, Nayeli. So thank you. Yes. Hi, everybody. Just lovely to be here with you, Nayeli. And just briefly, I'll go chronologically, 'cause sometimes it's easier to think that way. It's like, I was born. I was born in Virginia. I was born here in the US, but I moved to Mexico City when I was really young. I was like maybe 3-4 years old. My dad was Mexican. He passed away now, but he was Mexican, and my mom is from Colombia. So I'm half Colombian, half Mexican, grew up in Mexico City. And after graduating from high school, I went to college here in the US in California. I went to Pomona College. I majored in international relations, loved multiple languages. Like I studied French there. And another thing that I did while I was in college was I interned in a Hispanic advertising agency that's family owned, and loved advertising. So when I graduated from college, I went back to Mexico City and worked for a big ad agency back then it was called DMBMB, Darcy, Macias, Benton and Bowles, just one of the big kind of New York agencies. And our main client was Procter & Gamble. And so I worked for 2 years advertising, the traditional advertising for, Procter & Gamble.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm sorry. And I know we're going to go through the whole chronological, but why would you get your degree here and then go work in Mexico?
Oh, good. Yeah, good question. Because I did have an offer to work at an ad agency here in the US. I think it was just my culture was calling. I felt like I was finished with my degree. I really wanted to get a degree here in the States, and I wanted to go home, honestly. And I lived at home, and I was back with my friends and back with my culture, and all the advertising we did was in Spanish. So, it's a great question. I hadn't thought of that. But then, yeah, so I worked there for a couple years, and then I got married to an American and moved back to the US. So then I'm back here, and I worked briefly for an ad agency and then switched to a market research firm. Doing Hispanic market research. So this was a company in the Bay Area called Hispanic Market Connections. And so we had all these giant, corporations, companies that wanted to market to the Hispanics in the US, but this is 90s, okay? Late 90s. They wanted to understand the Hispanic market. And so I worked there. We did quantitative studies, qualitative studies, right? With companies. It was amazing. And so again, staying really true to my culture and my background. Yeah. Oh, I want to say, Nayeli, one of the projects, my favorite ones that we did was we helped launch People in Español, People magazine. So we got hired by, isn't that crazy? We got hired by Time Warner, and they're like, please help us understand the Hispanic market. We want to launch our magazine to the Hispanics. How do we do it? And so I was part of a team that we flew all over the US doing focus groups and trying to understand, what do people want in this magazine?
Back in the 90s, trying to talk to the Hispanic market was the big thing, right? And you just saw the worst translations, right? It was just there was someone who probably was like, I majored in Spanish, I could do this translation. And I think the companies that did it well did a really good job with it by hiring Latinos and getting us into the agencies because, the
Mhm.
best way to talk to us is to have representation in the group that's going to be reaching out to us.
You're so
Um,
right. You're so
we
right.
talk about how like Procter and Gamble has the number one toothpaste brand, except in
Mhm.
Mexico, where we have
Oh,
La Sonrisa Colgate.
see.
And, and it was just like, that just
Uh-huh.
really resonated. I always thought that was such an interesting fact to think that that a campaign can really influence the brands we use. And because we tend to be more brand loyal than some other cultures, you kind of see that going generationally.
Absolutely. And the nuances. The product that I worked on at that agency in Mexico for Procter& and Gamble was Ariel, which is a laundry detergent.
Oh, that is.
And I,
Yeah.
and I remember we launched Ariel like line extensions with lemon. And there's certain parts of Latin America that have, they call limon and Lima are different. Like limon is the green one and Lima is the yellow one, but some countries have it the opposite. So there's so many nuances. So even within Latin
Yeah.
America, we had to be so careful with how we were saying things when we were doing our advertising. So yeah,
I
all
was
right.
explaining to someone I always forget how to say it. Uh, but I saw a possum and I was like, oh, tlacuache. And then someone's like, what's that? And I'm like, that. And they said a different word. And I was just like, oh my God, you're right. Tlacuache is probably a very like Aztec word. And I'm like, that's a Mexican Spanish word. And so
Yes,
there's so many nuances just in within the countries in
so
one
many.
language.
So many. And I learned that exactly what you're talking about through working at ad agencies and market research firm because we had to, it's like the Hispanic market is not like everybody's the same, everybody speaks the same. So you have to be
No.
so good at understanding those differences and nuances.
One of
So
the things I don't understand though is like if you think about Europe, right? Like it has France and we know like things that are French and Italy and you have
mhm,
expectations of what Spain is like and Germany is like. And yet you have like a whole continent full of different, Spanish speaking countries, and
mhm,
we expect them to behave the same. And
mhm,
that's the part that was like, that was the most 90s thing there ever was. It's like,
mhm,
put it in Spanish and it'll sell.
mhm. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
You just described how it was exactly
Yeah.
that. And so it was just like fast forward to today, so different. But like, yeah, in the 90s, it was like, okay, that's a huge market. And so it was really fun to be part of that
Mhm.
wave, right? Kind of
Right.
riding the wave of this just huge interest in this in the
Mhm.
culture. And so then with that intention, I went to get my MBA at Kellogg because it's a marketing school, right? And I was like, okay, I've got advertising, market research, that's where I'm going. And I thought that I would stay with consumer products and kind of go along those lines.
Mhm.
But then I discovered technology, high tech. And this is like, again, late 90s, dot-coms everywhere. Amazon is
Oh,
like a baby.
I
Amazon
know.
was like
Yeah.
just books, they had
Yeah.
just
They're selling books
started.
out of a garage.
It was a
Oh, we sound
startup.
like dinosaurs when we talk like that. I have my Gmail address and
Yeah.
someone's like, "Oh, how'd you get that email?" And I was like, "Well, I paid $5 on eBay to get a beta test for Gmail." And I'm like, "What I should have done is taken those $5 and bought stock in Google."
Oh gosh. We had known. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm with you with that. Exactly. It's like if we had known, but like, yeah, high tech was just so hot at that time. So I went to Kellogg in 1997. I graduated in 1999. And so I was like, I want to be part of high tech. So I joined Hewlett Packard. So I was really interested in a big company rather than go to like a startup. I was like, I want to work for a big company with structure. And I loved HP. They moved me back to the Bay Area. So I worked in the Bay Area and doing marketing, not necessarily anything with Hispanic market, nothing like that, just general market, but marketing. And so I did that for a couple years. Then we moved, my husband, my family, we moved to Florida, then to Pacific Northwest. So we did a lot of moving, a lot for
Mhm.
him, for his opportunities. So what I ended up doing is I stayed home with our kids so I have 3 kids, and I stayed home for 6 years to have the babies, to raise the babies. And so I stayed
Beautiful.
home and it
Yeah.
was, it was so worth it. no regrets. And I was so ready to get back to work. And what I did, this was in 2006, after 6 years of being, a stay-at-home mom, I joined a friend of mine from business school that had launched a company called Stacy Blackman Consulting. And so I joined her as an MBA admissions consultant, and I stayed with her for many, many years, helping people who wanted to get to business school, right? Apply to business school, help them with their applications. And I did that for many years, part-time, and I loved it. And I had definitely a lot of Latinos, that I work with who were going back to, because I want people to go back to
Right.
school, because
Yeah.
we're just not, yeah, I think you've mentioned this before, like the representation, right, in business school or just
Oh,
in graduate
yeah, it was
school.
minimal.
So,
When I
yeah.
was going, so I went to Southern Methodist in Dallas,
Mm,
and at that point, I think they said, and this was the national average was 4% of
mm,
MBA students were Latinos. And
mhm.
of that 4%, like a sliver was women. It was mostly Latino men. And I was just like, okay, putting it all
Gotta
out there.
change
I
that.
did not have good grades in undergrad.
Mhm.
I worked full time. I often worked like 77 hours a week.
Oh my goodness.
So I
Mhm.
think I graduated with a 2.9,
Mhm.
which is not great. So when I was applying to grad school, I remember one of the things they said, your grades are not good, but what you've been able to accomplish in your professional career is what's impressive. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yes, because I'm a worker. Like that's what I do. And so I think when we think of, MBAs or getting your
Yeah.
master's, we have this thing of like we have to have great grades and we have to do this.
Mhm.
It's like no, all of it counts. All
Mhm.
of it counts.
All of it counts. And yeah, kudos to you for doing that. And I love it. And you're so right. I was like definitely a minority, like
Mhm.
Latina woman getting an MBA at Kellogg. So definitely, I think it's changed now. There's more, but still, I hope that changes. We need to change that, don't we? Yes.
Yeah, we do. There were, I think, two other Latinas, Marcela and Elizabeth, that I remember in my class.
Yeah, I know. So anyway, so yeah, so that's so anyway, so fast forward 10 years ago, our family moved to San Diego. This is where I am now, San Diego, California. And I made a complete shift. So I went from MBA admissions consulting to I discovered a whole new world of positive psychology, meditation, mindfulness meditation, wellness, well-being, just reading about all the the current state of of people's stress levels and
Yes.
at work and outside of work. And so I wanted to be part of the change, and that's when I went into coaching. So I started training in applied positive psychology coaching. I think right now I have like 17 certifications in the area of well-being and
Nice.
wellness. And so that's where I'm at right now. So I'm a coach, I'm a leadership coach. I am currently coaching undergraduate and graduate students, which I love that population. It's very exciting to help and support, the young generations. And so I do leadership coaching, and at the same time, I'm also a mentor. I'm a mentor at Northwestern in what is called the Affinity Leaders and Learners Mentorship Program, and I specifically mentor Latino. So far, I've had only women throughout the years, but just Latinos,
Yeah.
and I love that. I love that.
Yeah. And it's probably good. Like, I mean, for us, I know it would have been, I mean, I still got my MBA, but it would have been very helpful to have someone in there who had my back or who could
Mhm.
guide me or could say, like, don't take this class or this one's only offered in the spring or just, and that was just like as an academic counselor. SMU had a couple of really good people. I think there were just too many of us at one time, but I loved my education
Mhm.
there. And
Mhm.
I think it would have been really cool to at least have like one Latina professor or one Latina mentor or Latino, just someone that I could go and be like, hey, my parents are coming to town. I need to not come for 2 weeks.
Yes.
But
Yes.
it I think to see you and to see you at Northwestern, I don't know if you've heard our episode with Diana Hernandez. She went there and she
Okay.
got her master's. That's who I was talking with on that panel. But
Mhm.
I think we're starting to see more and more Latinas and Latinos getting their MBA and really enjoying and benefiting from this advanced education. I want to talk though about positivity because I know that that's like your passion, like you've made it your career.
So much. Yeah.
And a lot of studies, like John Hopkins did this whole study on how if you are a positive person, you have less heart attacks. You tend to call in sick less. Like, I think they said stress has, I think it was something like 11 or 12 million days off a year because of how stressed people are. Like, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
when you think about the power of positivity and just what it does for our health, it's a good reason. But I
Absolutely.
think as a community, we also need to shift how we speak into a more positive light.
Yes. 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 I completely agree. And this makes me think of like this and some may know about this word or phrase, the imposter syndrome, or that
Mhm.
a lot of us have heard about it, right? This idea that I don't belong here, like who am I to be, to interview for this job, things like that, right? And a lot of what we do in positive psychology is really tackle this imposter syndrome, which, by the way, is normal. We all have that. It always
Yeah.
kicks in.
Mhm.
And then how do you work with that? And it really boils down to our thoughts. And that's a lot what we do in positive psychology is like we really work on, and that's also part of mindfulness practice is like,
Yeah.
what are the thoughts that I'm having? These negative thoughts of not being good enough, not measuring up, or not, right? Not being the
Yeah.
right person in the room, or who am I? These doubts, these are all thoughts. And that's what, the coaching that I've done, that I've trained in the mindfulness meditation training that I've done, because I teach mindfulness meditation also, is all about working with our thoughts because they tend to be negative.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right?
they do. And I think, part of our mindset is, our grandparents or our parents had it rough, right? Or they got here, they didn't know the language. So, we took whatever jobs we could get. And now we're seeing that shift, but the mind shift hasn't converted, right? So we're still like, si tienes buen trabajo, stay there, even if your boss is mean, or even if and so I think
Yes.
breaking free of that mentality of like, no, you know what, I have permission to leave. And I say permission not from like our parents, but like to tell ourselves like, no, you can get out. You can have this life, or you can try for something else. But sometimes we get so stuck. Even like our dichos, right? Más vale diablo por
Diablo que viejo or something.
Yeah, no, más
What
sabe
was
el
that?
diablo por
I said
viejo que por diablo.
Diablo. That's it.
We stick to things that are customary or
Yes.
traditional. Like
Traditional. Yes.
yeah, that's our comfort, but then because of that blanket of comfort that we have of just work, get your paycheck, do it. Like sometimes we don't dream big enough. And so
Mm, yeah.
how do you work with undergraduates who are graduating, or even people in their master's program? How do you help them get past some of this imposter syndrome?
Yeah, that's a great question. I want to also bring up is this feeling of unworthiness, kind of what you were talking about. Like, it's like kind of going for these opportunities, right? Because sometimes, we feel that, oh, I'm just not good enough or unworthy, or this imposter syndrome.
Mhm.
So just examining, I think a lot of times I start with a vision. Like, what is their vision for their ideal life, what they want to have in their lives, right? So
Mhm.
it's really good to envision, to visualize this, and then and then really also look at values. I always have my students look at and make some reflection as to what are their values, what's important to them, what matters to them, right?
When you talk about vision,
Mhm.
do you mean like, I want to go on vacation every year with my family, or I want a nice car or a big house? Like, are those visions?
Could be that, or could be, again, I work with them in a leadership program. So usually it's in the context of leadership in their leadership journey. But what is
Okay.
it that they aspire to? So and
Mhm.
maybe turn it into aspiration. What is their
Okay.
aspiration? They're young,
Mhm.
and of course, they don't have the life experience that we have, you and I, right?
Right. Right.
So a lot of times that's good because they can dream, like you were saying earlier, they can dream big. And so yeah, starting with
Mhm.
like what is their vision? What is it they want to achieve? And also not getting stuck with one particular idea, because just knowing, and this is part of, growing up, just having more life experience, that we realize that our life changes. We can have this vision,
Yes.
this idea, this is what I want to do. But then life is messy and we can go in different directions. It's okay. And that can change. That vision can change. And I want to make that clear too. Just like goals and things like that,
Yeah.
and set goals, but we can, also change. Like I just told you my story, and it was like I didn't design it that way. It's not like, oh, I'm here because it was purely how I kind of imagined my life. I was going to be a coach in positive psychology. Like I had no idea, but I
Yeah.
got here. And I'm
And I
sure you
think
have
being
that experience too.
open.
Hmm.
Yeah, I had lots of moments where I had someone who, a mentor at work who was like, apply for this position or think about this, or have you thought about doing this? I broke my leg in January of 2019, and I
Mm.
broke from my knee to my ankle, two
Oh God.
bones, cracked my knee, cracked my ankle. And so I couldn't move for a while. And during that time of reflection, I decided to leave corporate and start my own
Mhm.
business. I think if you would have told me my vision, I would have been like corporate forever, because I actually loved corporate. I loved the benefits. I loved the learning and development programs. I loved the structure. I loved the support. I
Mhm.
loved everything that corporate America had to offer.
Mhm.
As
Mhm.
I sat on my couch for a long time, I was also enjoying being at home with my kids and being there when they got home after school. And so I was like, okay, how do I balance this? And this is, pre-pandemic, so there
Yeah.
weren't as many remote or work from home jobs or
Yeah.
whatnot. So I was like, I need to change my structure. To me, like, I think you can build that vision
Yeah.
over and over as many times as you want.
Completely. It changes. Isn't that beautiful? Like I just like looking back, it's like, oh, how we end up where we are is so interesting, right?
Yeah.
We can design, we can certainly, and I really believe in that. We can have goals, set goals, have this, this is, things, be aligned with our values, right? Live out our values and that. And life takes us in a different direction, and we just have to, I think you said flowing with it or going with it, and you just go with the flow. I mean, truly, it's not it's so true to go with the flow. And so and discover. I think you were talking about also kind of discovering and being open, right? To
Yeah.
possibilities. And like you learned that from something, from something actually, unfortunate, right? Which is you were in
Right.
pain, you couldn't do certain things, but then you had time to reflect.
My
So
dad always says that if you don't give your body rest, it will force you to take it. And I think that breaking my bones was my body's way of saying, like, siéntate.
yes, and take a breath, and yes, and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, so we talked about vision, and
yeah,
we talked about kind of identifying our values. What are some
value.
other ways to practice positivity or to bring it to the forefront?
I think intentionally looking for moments of positivity. I believe Barbara Fredrickson, who studies and has written a lot on positivity, she's at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and she says something like finding micro moments of positivity throughout the day, because
Yes.
we know it's documented, it's scientifically proven that our brain is wired to be negative, right? And like
Yes.
90% of what happens in this brain of ours is like
Yeah.
negative.
We look for negatives.
You
Yeah.
look for negative. You get 5 comments from somebody, like 4 are great. One is like, oh, you should work on this, like after you gave a
You're
presentation.
like,
And
why
then
would
we,
you say that to me?
right?
Yeah.
And we stay on with that. And it's so our brain is wired for negative. It's called the negativity bias, right?
Mhm.
It's wired for negative. And so what I would say to that is like, and how I've been taught, and this is what I always share, is finding throughout the day moments, little, medium, large, no matter the size, are of good things that are going well, a
Yes.
beautiful, morning, sun shining, cafecito, this
Oh, yeah.
conversation, just so many moments. But it really takes intention, Nayeli, because our brain again goes on autopilot. And so we just really need to be aware. So there's that awareness, right? We create
Mhm.
awareness. We notice, that's mindfulness. We notice, oh, this is happening. And then staying with it. They say, I believe it's like 30 seconds, like truly staying with the experience so that it gets locked in, right? Into the
Yes.
brain, into our system, and we feel it, and we can always recall it. And those become memories that we can, go back to and cherish, like, oh, remember the time. But I think it's a practice, and it really, we can do that every single day, every single day. What do
Yes,
you
I do that.
think?
And
Yeah.
I'm a big believer. I didn't know exactly what it was called. What did you say it's called?
Negativity bias.
Okay.
The negativity
No, no,
bias.
no. So
Oh,
I always called it moments of happiness.
oh, moment. Oh, the micro moments of positivity. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I called it happiness moments. And
Happiness moments.
I tell people, I'm like, we have to find those moments of happiness. And I describe mine like sometimes for me, it's like my first cup of coffee in the morning. So I wake up earlier than my family and I go have a cup of coffee and it's just my time.
Yeah.
I like how it smells when the grass is cut.
Mm,
I love there's this taco truck that I go to, and every time I drive past it and I smell it, like it makes me happy.
mm,
And so I'll stop and get like one or two tacos because I drive by there a lot, so I can't
yummy.
have that many. Um, but the point is that it's
Yeah.
to find those moments of happiness and acknowledge them, to let them, like you said, to let them sink in. And
Yeah.
sometimes we think that happiness has to be like a vacation or a plane trip or a post on Facebook or just all these things. And I'm like, oh no, just having a day where it's like sunny
Mm,
or where you get a call or a text from someone you weren't expecting and then be that person to send that call or text to someone so that you could give them a moment of happiness. But to me, those little moments,
yeah.
when you put them all together, they make for really good days.
Yeah, they add up. Absolutely. Don't they? They certainly
Yes.
add up. And if we do that every day, and again, with intention, and we can even literally get up in the morning and have the intention of doing that, right? And then we might forget, and then we just go on autopilot, but then we can always reset that intention and be like,
Yes.
oh, for the rest of my day, I'm going to be looking out for those things. And like you're saying, acknowledge them. And then a lot of people have the gratitude practice. They have a gratitude
Mhm.
journal, right? Or maybe they send a text to someone at the end of the day. It's like 3 things that went well. There's that practice. There's a lot of
Yes.
stuff behind
Yes.
the 3 good things. So all those things add up because we want to build more of those moments because the negativity or the negative things weigh so much.
Yes.
They have so much
Yeah.
power.
You're gonna
It's not our
remember
fault.
those anyway. Yeah.
You remember those anyway, right? And so
Right.
it's not our fault. It's like this is just how our brain is wired, literally. And so, but it's just the awareness, having the awareness of doing that
Yeah.
goes a long ways.
No, I think that that's huge. And I think if we all even just started practicing one of those three things, whether you put your vision and you just kind of say, this is what I want to do, or this is how I see myself, or,
Yeah.
I always talk about when you meet a good leader or you see someone that you respect and admire, like take take those characteristics and start building
Mhm.
your own leadership style. So I think these are really good pieces of advice for people to focus on as I think we would all choose positivity, but unfortunately, like you said, our brains are wired for negative, right? Like
Yeah.
when someone gets hurt or someone like, oh, yo también me caí, or a mí también me duele esto. And we talk about it because the bad stuff puts us into, we commiserate.
We can
Yeah,
misery.
we start
Yeah.
bonding over that. But maybe we
Yeah.
could be more mindful to bond over good experiences like
Mhm.
cafecitos.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, and just yeah, and a lot of people talk about also it's not like we have to be happy all the time. They talk about like
No.
toxic positivity. That's even a term now, right? It's not about that, right? It's
You're
not
too
about
happy.
like,
You're too positive.
yeah, or like overlooking the negative, like, oh, you're not being really. No, we can be realistic,
Mhm.
and there's good and there's bad, there's positive, there's negative, and just practicing more, focusing on the positive is good. And there's
Yes,
science, there's science proves, and you were saying that earlier that there's less stress, and this is very important in the workplace, right? That
right.
and companies are spending more time, more resources in well-being and wellness programs for employees, right? And they realize that it's important if they want employees to be happy, to show up at work, right?
Right.
And
100%. Yeah, I
right,
mean, it boosts productivity,
mm,
health. People who are positive tend to be better salespeople. Like there's so much research done
many
on the
benefits,
impact of
right?
positivity. So,
Yeah.
Marina, I think you have given our listeners some great advice. Imposter syndrome,
Hmm.
visualizing their leadership and, just everything. So I think that they are going to, well, we all are going to benefit from having your advice, and we'll definitely put your contact information if you guys want to reach out to Marina and, ask her questions. She is a wealth of resource. And so thank
Oh,
you
thank
so
you.
much por acompañarnos, por tomarnos el cafecito de hoy.
Thank you so much for those nice words. And yes, and this is stuff that I practice, by the way. I mean, I appreciate your, calling it like my advice or something, but like I am working on this literally as I'm saying it every single day. So just know that we're all on the same boat, right? And I
Yeah.
love how you always, Nayeli, I so appreciate like you want to lift us all up, with this, with these conversations, with the work that you do in the world is
Oh, thank
just
you.
so beautiful, so inspiring, because I
Oh,
I
thank
I
you.
know that you are touching a lot of lives in such a positive way. So I'm just so happy to
We got to
to
keep the
speak to you.
positive wave going.
Yeah.
All
Thank
right. Well, thank you, Marina. And join us next time on Corporate Cafecito. Aquí los esperamos.
I will. Thank you.
Bye.
Adiós a todos.